Kim Tae-ho walked into the huge training room and felt very small. The walls went up so high he could not see the top. The floor was made of some kind of crystal that made his footsteps sound loud in the quiet space. He looked around at all the strange beings sitting in chairs that were made for bodies very different from his own. There were creatures he had never seen before, even in the Earth files about alien species. A tall lizard thing with skin that changed colors from green to blue to red sat near the front. Its eyes moved in different directions at the same time, watching everything in the room. A floating ball of light that looked like it was made of electricity hung in the air near the window. It made soft humming sounds. That might have been music, or maybe just the way it breathed. In another corner sat something that looked like it was made of living rock. Its body was huge and gray with cracks running through it like old stone. The rock creature had no face that Tae-ho could see, but somehow he knew it was looking at him. A group of small furry things with too many arms whispered to each other in a language that sounded like birds singing very fast. Tae-ho found an empty chair and sat down carefully. The chair changed shape to fit his human body, which surprised him. Everything here was so advanced compared to what he knew from Earth. He thought about his home in Seoul, where his family was probably eating dinner right now. His little sister, so young, had cried when he left for the Space Academy. She said she would miss his terrible jokes and the way he always stole food from her plate. The door at the front of the room opened with a sound like breaking glass. A creature walked in that made all the other strange beings look normal. It was as tall as 3 humans standing on each other's shoulders. It had 4 arms that ended in hands with too many fingers. Its head was shaped like a triangle, with huge eyes that looked like the compound. Eyes of a fly, but much bigger. When it opened its mouth to speak, Tae-ho could see rows of sharp teeth. This was Commander Zorneth, the instructor. Tae-ho had read about him in the files. The creature was from a species called the Vorthak, who were known as great warriors and teachers. They had been fighting wars in space for thousands of years before humans even learned how to make fire. The commander looked around the room with all those eyes moving independently. It was very disturbing to watch. He seemed to be looking at everyone at the same time. His voice was deep and made the crystal floor vibrate when he spoke. The words came out in the universal language that all the students had learned. Welcome, young ones, to advanced combat. Training at the Galactic Military Academy. Each of you represents your species in this great institution. You are here to learn the arts of war and protection that have kept peace in our galaxy for centuries. He pointed at different students with his various arms as he continued talking. The Krell have natural armor that can stop plasma bolts. The Nexari can walk through walls like they are made of air. The Zephyrians can fly faster than most small spacecraft. Each species brings gifts that make them valuable warriors. When his eyes focused on Tae-ho, the human felt like he was being examined by a machine that could see inside his bones. The commander paused for a long moment before speaking again. And the humans. Well, we shall discover what makes your people special. Some of the other students made sounds that might have been laughter. The floating light creature pulsed brighter, and the lizard thing's scales shifted to what looked like an amused yellow color. Tae-ho felt his face get hot with embarrassment, but he kept his expression calm like his grandfather had taught him. The room itself was amazing beyond anything Tae-ho had imagined. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and battle formations. Weapons from 100 different worlds hung in cases along the sides. There were energy rifles that could melt through starship hulls and swords made of solidified light. Some weapons looked so strange that Tae-ho could not even guess how they worked. Commander Zorneth began his first lesson about the history of galactic warfare. He talked about great battles fought between stars and weapons that could destroy entire planets. The other students listened with excitement in their strange faces or energy patterns. They all seemed to know these stories already, like human children knew fairy tales. As the lesson went on, Tae-ho noticed something interesting. All these advanced alien weapons seemed to work the same way. They used massive amounts of energy to cause huge amounts of damage. They were designed to overwhelm enemies with pure destructive power. Every species had developed their fighting styles around the idea that bigger and more powerful was always better. The lizard creature called Veltar raised one of its color-changing hands. Commander, why do we study these old battles? The weapons we have now are much better than anything used in the past. Surely raw power is all that matters in modern warfare. Commander Zorneth clicked his teeth, together in what might have been approval. That is exactly the kind of thinking that loses wars. Young Veltar power without wisdom is just destruction without purpose. The greatest victories in galactic history were won by those who understood that warfare is about more than who has the biggest gun after class ended. Several alien students came over to look at Taeho like he was an interesting museum display. A small creature with tentacles instead of arms spoke in a voice like singing. Human Taeho, what weapons does your species use? We have heard stories about something called atomic bombs, but those seem very crude compared to antimatter warheads. Taeho thought about his grandfather who had taught him archery in the mountains. Behind their house, the old man always said that a good archer could hunt any animal with just a simple bow and the right kind of patience. We use whatever works, he said quietly. Sometimes the simple way is the best way. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. Simple weapons. How can simple weapons compete against plasma cannons and gravity bombs? One of the rock creatures made a sound like boulders falling down a mountain, which might have been laughter. Taeho did not get angry at their reaction. He had learned patience from years of practice with his grandfather. The old man had always said, "The loudest hunter scares away all the game. The wise hunter waits and watches and strikes when the moment is right." As the other students left the room talking excitedly about advanced weapons and energy shields, Taeho stayed behind to look at the weapon displays. He studied each one carefully, trying to understand how they worked. Most relied on complex technology that required rare materials and huge amounts of power. They were impressive but also fragile in their own way. Walking back to his small room in the student quarters, Taeho felt lonely for the first time since arriving at the academy. All the other students had natural abilities that made them dangerous fighters. The rock creatures were nearly indestructible. The energy beings could control electricity. The flying species could attack from above. What did humans have? They were not the strongest or fastest or toughest species in the galaxy. They had no natural weapons like claws or poison or energy projection. Human technology was still primitive compared to most galactic civilizations. They were newcomers in a universe full of ancient and powerful races. But as he fell asleep that night, Taeho remembered something his grandfather had told him when he was learning to shoot. The best archer is not the one with the most expensive bow or the sharpest arrows. The best archer is the one who can hit the target with whatever he has in his hand. Maybe that was what made humans special. Not their strength or their technology, but their ability to find a way to succeed, no matter what tools they had. Maybe being the newest and weakest species in the galaxy was not such a bad thing after all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new lessons. Taeho would continue to be underestimated by his classmates and instructors. But deep down, he knew that humans had something that might surprise everyone when the right moment came. The question was whether he would be ready when that moment arrived. 3 weeks had passed since Taeho first walked into the training hall, and things had changed in ways he never expected. At first, the other students had ignored him or treated him like a curious pet from a backward planet. But now they were starting to notice him for different reasons. In the tactical simulation classes, Taeho was winning battles he should have lost. On paper, his human abilities were far below those of his alien classmates. He could not fly like the Zephyrians or phase through walls like the Nexari. He had no natural armor or energy weapons or psychic powers, but somehow he kept finding ways to beat opponents who should have crushed him easily. When the rock creature Gorth charged at him with unstoppable force, Taeho simply stepped aside at the last moment and let the massive being crash into a wall. When the energy creature Nixara tried to overwhelm him with electrical attacks, he used the metal training equipment to redirect the lightning away from himself. When 3 small fast aliens tried to surround him, he climbed up on the obstacles in the training room and picked them off one by one from above. The other students were confused by his tactics. Most galactic species fought by using their natural advantages. In direct confrontation, the strong ones tried to overpower their enemies. The fast ones tried to outrun them. The tough ones tried to outlast them. But Taeho did something different. He used the environment around him as part of his strategy. Commander Zornith had noticed too. During one simulation where Taeho defeated a team of 4 opponents by collapsing a wall section on them, the instructor made clicking sounds with his mandibles. Interesting approach. Cadet Kim. Most species try to overcome obstacles. Humans seem to turn obstacles into weapons. This did not make some students happy, especially Veltar, the color-changing lizard creature who had been the top student before Taeho arrived. Veltar came from a warrior culture where individual combat skill was the most important thing in life. Being beaten by what he saw as a primitive human was more than his pride could handle. His scales had been shifting through angry red colors more and more often. When other students talked about Taeho's unusual victories, Veltar would make dismissive sounds and change the subject, but Taeho could see the frustration building in the alien warrior's posture. The breaking point came during a lesson about siege warfare. Commander Zornith was explaining how different species had developed ways to attack fortified positions. The Krell used their natural armor to walk through defensive fire. The Siltani used gravity weapons to crush walls. The Vorthak, like the commander himself, used coordinated attacks with their multiple arms. Veltar had been shifting colors rapidly during the entire lesson. Finally, he could not stay quiet anymore. Commander Zornith, he interrupted with his scales flashing bright crimson. I believe we are spending too much time on theory and not enough on practice. Perhaps it is time for real demonstrations. Let each species show what their natural combat abilities can actually do. The commander's compound eyes focused on Veltar with interest. The instructor had been wondering how to properly test his diverse students. A practical demonstration would show him things that simulations could not. An excellent suggestion. Cadet Veltar. Tomorrow we will have demonstration day. Each student will showcase their species' traditional fighting methods. A wave of excitement went through the classroom like electricity. The various alien students began talking among themselves, eager to show off their natural gifts. Nyx Ara pulsed brighter with anticipation. Sil Andra, the crystal creature, rang like a bell. The rock beings flexed their massive stone muscles. Ho felt his stomach drop while everyone else got excited. Unlike his classmates, humans had no natural weapons to demonstrate, no claws or fangs or poison, no energy projection or rock-hard skin, no ability to fly or become invisible. Just soft pink skin and basic intelligence that did not seem impressive compared to what surrounded him. After class ended, Veltar approached Taeho with what might have been a smile on his reptilian features, though it was hard to tell with alien expressions. I am very eager to see what the mighty human warrior will show us tomorrow. Perhaps you will throw rocks at the targets, or maybe hit them with sticks like your primitive ancestors. Several other students made sounds that were probably laughter in their species. The small, furry creatures chittered excitedly. The floating gas beings made high-pitched whistling noises. Even some of the normally quiet rock creatures rumbled with what sounded like amusement. Taeho kept his face calm, even though he felt embarrassed and worried inside. Every weapon started as a rock or stick, he replied quietly, remembering something his grandfather used to say. The warrior, who laughs at simple tools, often dies to them. But even as he said the words, Taeho wondered what he would actually do tomorrow. He could not compete with natural claws that could cut through metal or energy projection that could melt steel. What could a human demonstrate that would not look pathetic next to such abilities? That evening, Taeho sat alone in his small dormitory room staring at his communication device. A message had arrived from home showing a video his sister So Young had recorded. Their grandfather was in the backyard practicing his archery like he did every morning for the past 60 years. The old man moved with practiced grace, drawing his traditional Korean bow and sending arrow after arrow into the distant target. Each shot was perfect, hitting exactly where he aimed with mechanical precision. His form was flawless, developed through decades of daily practice. Big brother. So Young's voice said over the video, "Grandfather wants you to remember something. Our ancestors conquered half the world with nothing but bows and arrows. He also says the loudest dog barks the most but bites the least." Taeho smiled for the first time in days. His grandfather had always been full of old Korean wisdom that seemed simple but contained deep truth. The old man had taught him that strength was not about having the biggest muscles or the sharpest claws. True strength came from using whatever you had more cleverly than your opponent expected. As he prepared for sleep, Tae-ho thought about the stories his grandfather used to tell, tales of Korean warriors who faced impossible odds against enemies with better weapons and larger armies. The Mongol invasions, where Korean archers held mountain passes against overwhelming numbers. The Japanese invasions, where clever tactics defeated superior forces. Those ancient warriors had not won through superior technology or natural advantages. They had won through ingenuity, determination, and the willingness to use whatever tools were available in unexpected ways. Maybe that was the human advantage. Not what they were born with, but what they could create when survival demanded it. Tomorrow he would have to stand in front of his classmates and demonstrate human combat abilities. He still did not know exactly what he would do. But for the first time since Veltar issued his challenge, Tae-ho felt a spark of confidence. His grandfather had always said that the best archer was not the one with the most expensive equipment, but the one who could hit any target with whatever bow was in his hands. Perhaps it was time to show these advanced alien warriors what a human could do with the most basic tools. The challenge had been issued and accepted. Tomorrow would determine whether humans deserved respect in this galaxy of powerful species, or if they would remain curiosities from a primitive world. Tae-ho fell asleep thinking about bows and arrows, and the wisdom of old men who understood that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. Tae-ho worked with the kind of focused concentration that came from years of practice under his grandfather's patient teaching. The alien students watched in fascination as he continued reshaping the classroom materials with techniques that seemed primitive yet strangely sophisticated. Using metal strips torn from the chair frame, he reinforced the stress points where the most pressure would be applied. When he bent the improvised bow to test its flexibility, the entire structure moved as one piece, storing and releasing energy smoothly. The polymer from the chair back had just the right amount of spring to work perfectly. Next came the arrows, and this was where Tae-ho's years of traditional training really showed. He took apart more chair components using the straight pieces for arrow shafts. Metal fragments became arrowheads shaped and sharpened with techniques his grandfather had taught him in the mountains of Korea. Fabric strips were carefully torn and attached as fletching to stabilize flight. Every movement was economical and purposeful. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Each piece was tested and adjusted until it met standards that existed only in Tae-ho's mind, but had been honed through decades of ancestral knowledge passed down through generations. Veltar watched with scales shifting through colors that showed confusion mixed with growing unease. The proud Cytherian warrior had expected the human to fail spectacularly. Instead, he was witnessing something that looked almost like magic. Furniture was becoming a weapon system right before his eyes. "This is ridiculous," Veltar said loud enough for many to hear. "The human is playing with scraps. My claws could cut through that primitive device without any effort at all. Why are we wasting time with museum pieces?" Tae-ho looked up from his work meeting, the lizard creature's compound eyes calmly. "Every weapon has its place, Cadet Veltar. This one has served my people well for over 10,000 years. 1,000 years. The number hit the alien students like a physical blow. Most of their advanced weapons had been developed within the last few centuries. Some species had only achieved spaceflight more recently than that. The idea of using the same basic weapon design for 10 millennia was almost incomprehensible. Commander Zorneth moved closer to examine Tae-ho's work. The instructor's multiple arms allowed him to study the bow from several angles at once, while his compound eyes analyzed every detail. "The engineering principles are sound," he admitted. "Efficient energy storage, reliable mechanical systems, elegant simplicity, working steadily." Tae-ho crafted 6 arrows from the available materials. Each projectile was carefully balanced and tested. The arrowheads were shaped to penetrate rather than cause massive damage. The fletching was precisely angled to ensure stable flight. Even made from classroom furniture, these arrows showed clear understanding of aerodynamics and physics. The human tested each arrow individually, checking its weight and balance against the others. His hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory, guiding actions learned through thousands of hours of repetition. The same techniques Korean archers had used to defend mountain passes against Mongol cavalry were being recreated in a classroom light years from Earth. As Tae-ho put the finishing touches on his improvised weapon system, Commander Zorneth activated several target systems at different distances. Standard practice dummies appeared, but also smaller, more challenging targets that would test precision rather than raw destructive power. The demonstration targets are ready. Cadet Kim, the instructor, announced. Please proceed when you are. Prepared Tae-ho stood holding his completed bow. The improvised weapon looked small and insignificant compared to the high-tech equipment around the room, but in his hands it seemed to come alive. The polymer and metal bent smoothly as he tested the draw weight one final time. He selected his first arrow, knocking it with a motion so practiced it seemed unconscious. The string came back to his anchor point, a position learned through years of repetition, until it became as natural as breathing. His stance was perfect, weight-balanced breathing. Controlled eyes focused not on the bow or arrow, but on the exact point where he wanted the projectile to strike. The room fell completely silent. Every alien eye sensor and detection organ focused on the human standing alone in the center of the demonstration area. He looked impossibly primitive compared to his classmates, holding a weapon that seemed more suitable for a historical display than a modern battlefield. But something had changed in the atmosphere. The other students could sense that they were about to witness something important. Even Veltar had stopped shifting colors, his scales locked in a pattern that showed intense concentration. Tae-ho breathed slowly, finding his center, the way his grandfather had taught him during those early morning sessions in the Korean mountains. The target was 50 meters away, well within range for a traditional bow. His eyes focused on a spot no larger than a coin on the practice dummy. The release was clean and smooth, perfected through countless repetitions. The bowstring snapped forward with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent hall. The improvised arrow flew straight and true, its flight path as precise as if it had been calculated by computer. The arrow struck the center of the target with enough force to punch completely through the practice dummy. The reinforced material designed to withstand energy weapons parted like paper before the simple projectile. The entire dummy rocked backward from the impact. Before the alien students could fully process what they had witnessed, Tae-ho was already nocking his second arrow. This target was smaller and at greater distance, requiring compensation for gravity drop and air resistance. His calculations were done, instinctively processed by a mind trained through years of practice. The second arrow found its mark with the same precision as the first. Then the third and fourth, each shot demonstrating not just accuracy, but an understanding of physics that impressed even the advanced alien minds. Watching every arrow hit exactly where Tae-ho aimed with mechanical consistency. Remarkable, breathed Silandra, her crystalline structure resonating with harmonics that indicated deep appreciation. The precision is extraordinary for such a primitive weapon system, but Tae-ho was just getting started. The next series of shots showed capabilities that made the aliens realize they had seriously underestimated both the weapon and the warrior using it. He began hitting targets behind partial cover, using calculated ricochets off the room's metal surfaces. When Commander Zorneth activated moving targets that changed direction randomly, Tae-ho adapted instantly. His arrows intercepted the moving dummies at precisely calculated points. Prediction, timing, and trajectory all came together in displays of marksmanship that rivaled computer-controlled systems. Most impressive of all, he began splitting his own arrows Robin Hood style, sending new projectiles down exactly the same trajectory to strike the nocks of previously fired shots. The wooden shafts split cleanly, showing that his accuracy was not just good, but perfect. The alien students watched in stunned silence as this human, using nothing but classroom furniture and ancient techniques, displayed precision that matched their most advanced targeting computers. Each shot was not just accurate, but demonstrated intuitive understanding of complex physics that their own weapons handled automatically. Even Veltar had fallen silent, his scales now showing colors that indicated shock mixed with the beginning of something that might have been respect. The proud warrior who had dominated combat training for years was witnessing skills that transcended the limitations of primitive technology. How is this possible? whispered one student to another. He is calculating trajectories faster than our computers. The rate of fire is remarkable too, observed Nixara, her energy form pulsing with analytical patterns. Each shot follows the previous one with no apparent delay. Yet accuracy never decreases. Commander Zorneth watched with growing amazement as Tejo continued his demonstration. The instructor was trained to recognize tactical advantages in all their forms. What he was seeing challenged every assumption about the relationship between technology and effectiveness. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Instead of stopping with his successful demonstration of basic archery, Tejo continued shooting, and each arrow became more impressive than the last, who struck targets that were completely hidden behind barriers using ricochets that bounced off 3 different surfaces before finding their marks. The mathematics involved in calculating such complex trajectories should have required computer assistance, but Tejo seemed to process everything instantly in his mind. When Commander Zorneth activated randomly moving targets that changed speed and direction, without warning, Tejo adapted in real time. His arrows intercepted the moving dummies at precisely predicted points, showing an understanding of physics and timing that amazed the watching aliens. Most impressive of all, he began demonstrating what his grandfather had called impossible shots. Arrows that curved around obstacles by using air currents in the room. Projectiles that struck multiple targets by fragmenting at exactly the right moment. Shots that seemed to defy the laws of physics but were actually perfect applications of those same laws. The alien students watched in growing amazement as this human, using nothing but improvised classroom materials, displayed capabilities that rivaled their most advanced weapon systems. Each shot was not just accurate but showed deep understanding of concepts that their own technology handled automatically. Veltar stood frozen, his scales cycling through colors faster than anyone had ever seen. The proud Cytherian warrior who had spent years perfecting his natural combat abilities was witnessing skills that seemed to transcend the limitations of primitive weapons. His worldview was cracking like ice in spring. The rate of fire is impossible, observed Nixara, her energy form pulsing with confused patterns. Our analysis shows 12 arrows fired in 30 seconds with 0 decrease in accuracy. How can biological reflexes operate faster than our targeting computers? Commander. Zorneth moved closer to observe the demonstration from multiple angles. His compound eyes tracked every movement while his forearms gestured in ways that indicated deep professional interest. Cadet Kim, please explain the strategic applications of this weapon system. Tejo lowered his bow but kept one arrow nocked ready for immediate use. This weapon can be constructed from materials available in almost any environment, Instructor. It requires no external power source, produces no energy signature that can be detected by sensors, and operates in complete silence. He gestured toward the various high-tech weapons displayed. Around the room, these advanced systems are impressive, but they all share common vulnerabilities. They require specific ammunition power cells or rare materials that might not be available in hostile territory. They produce signatures that enemy sensors can track. Most importantly, they can malfunction or be disabled by electromagnetic interference. The human walked over to one of his embedded arrows, examining how deeply it had penetrated the reinforced target material. This bow will function in any atmosphere at any temperature, and in the presence of electromagnetic fields that would disable your advanced weapons. It can be repaired with basic tools, and its ammunition can be recovered and reused indefinitely. Gorth, the massive stone, being raised one rocky appendage, but surely the damage potential is limited compared to plasma weapons or antimatter charges. Why choose precision over raw destructive power? Tejo smiled, remembering another lesson from his grandfather about the difference between destruction and victory. Cadet Gorth, what good is unlimited destructive power if you cannot hit your target? My people have a saying, the arrow that strikes the eye kills just as surely as the bomb that destroys the city. He picked up one of his improvised arrows, showing the others how the metal point had been carefully shaped. Precision trumps power in most combat situations. This arrow, placed correctly, can disable electronic systems, pierce armor joints, or strike vital organs. It can deliver poison carry messages or start fires. Its versatility comes from the user's knowledge, not the weapon's complexity. The alien students began looking at the human's demonstration with completely new understanding. What they had initially dismissed as primitive was actually sophisticated in ways their advanced technology could not match. The bow represented adaptability, resourcefulness, and the ability to fight effectively, regardless of circumstances. A small, furry creature with multiple arms raised several appendages at once. Human Teho, your weapon requires no ammunition factories, no supply chains, no technological infrastructure. But how do you achieve such accuracy without computer assistance? Teho considered how to explain, something that seemed natural to him but was clearly alien to others. My grandfather taught me that the mind and body must work together. We do not calculate arrow paths with mathematics alone, but feel them through practice and experience. Thousands of hours of repetition create what you might call intuitive physics. The concept fascinated his alien classmates. Most of their combat systems relied on technology to handle complex calculations, leaving the user free to focus on strategy and tactics. The idea of internalizing those calculations through biological training was revolutionary. Commander Zorneth examined the improvised bow with all 4 arms, while his compound eyes analyzed every component. The engineering principles are elegant. He admitted efficient energy storage, reliable mechanical advantage, and remarkable simplicity. Most impressive is the manufacturing time. You created a functional weapon system from classroom materials in under 30 minutes, but Veltar was not ready to accept what he had witnessed. His scales flashed angry red as his pride struggled against the evidence of his eyes. In actual combat, would such a primitive weapon be practical against modern armor and energy shields? That depends, Teho replied, on how you define practical. In direct confrontation against heavy armor, this bow would be ineffective. But combat is not always about direct confrontation. He moved to the room's tactical display, activating a holographic battlefield scenario. The key is not to fight the enemy's strength, but to exploit their weaknesses. Advanced civilizations often develop blind spots. They prepare for threats similar to their own capabilities while overlooking simpler approaches. The hologram showed various combat situations where precision weapons could be more effective than powerful ones, disabling power systems by striking junction boxes, eliminating sentries silently from long range, creating distractions that allowed flanking maneuvers, striking weak points in heavily armored vehicles. Sometimes the best weapon is not the most advanced one. Teho continued, but the one your enemy does not expect. A plasma cannon announces your position to every sensor in the area. This bow can eliminate targets without anyone knowing an attack has occurred. Silandra resonated with thoughtful harmonics. You are suggesting that technological superiority can become a weakness if it makes a species predictable. Exactly. Teho nodded. My people learned long ago that the side with better weapons does not always win. The side that uses their weapons more cleverly usually does. The demonstration had lasted over an hour, but felt like minutes to the watching students. They had witnessed something that challenged their basic assumptions about warfare technology and the relationship between advancement and effectiveness. Teho began collecting his arrows for reuse. Several alien students approached with questions they had never thought to ask before. Their worldview had been expanded in ways that would influence their thinking for years to come. Commander Zorneth clicked his mandibles in a pattern that indicated deep approval. Cadet Kim, your demonstration has been most enlightening. I believe we all have much to learn about the difference between complexity and effectiveness. The humble human who had entered the academy feeling outmatched by his classmates, natural advantages had become something unexpected, a teacher. Not through superior strength or advanced technology, but by demonstrating that sometimes the oldest solutions were also the best ones. Word of the demonstration would spread beyond the academy, reaching military commanders across the galaxy. Everyone would want to understand what other surprises the newest species might bring to galactic warfare. But those who witnessed it firsthand knew the real lesson was not about weapons at all. It was about the human capacity to find extraordinary solutions in ordinary materials, and the wisdom to understand that the newest technology is not always the most effective technology. The bow had been impressive, but the mind that created it from classroom furniture was what truly amazed them. The next morning came too soon for Taeho. The training hall had been transformed overnight. Commander Zorneth had moved all the regular equipment to the sides, creating a huge open space in the center. Protective barriers made of energy surrounded the demonstration area. Advanced recording devices floated in the air, ready to capture every moment for analysis. Students from other classes had come to watch, word having spread through the academy about the demonstration day. The hall was packed, with alien beings of all shapes and sizes. Some hung from the ceiling, others floated in the air, and many more filled every available seat. The excitement in the room was thick enough to feel. Commander Zorneth stood in the center of the space, his forearms spread wide and his compound eyes scanning the crowd. Today we witness the combat heritage of 23 different species, he announced in his deep voice. Each cadet will demonstrate the natural fighting abilities that have made their people successful in the galaxy one by one. The alien students took their turns, and each display was more amazing than the last. Veltar went first, his scales shifting to aggressive colors as he activated his species' natural camouflage. The lizard creature seemed to fade from view, becoming almost invisible to the naked eye. Suddenly he appeared right next to a practice dummy, moving faster than Taeho could follow. His claws extended like razor-sharp knives, slicing through the reinforced training material as if it were paper. The dummy fell apart in perfectly cut pieces while Veltar stood over it with his scales now showing proud golden colors. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause from whatever appendages each species used for showing approval. Veltar looked directly at Taeho with what was definitely a smug expression. His message clear: beat that if you can. Next came Silandra, the crystalline being whose body began to glow with inner light. As the glow intensified, she started making a sound that was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The harmonic frequencies resonated through the air, making the metal walls vibrate. 3 separate target dummies simply came apart at the molecular level, dissolving into component atoms as the sonic waves hit them. The destruction was so complete that not even dust remained where the targets had been standing. The crowd fell silent in awe of such precise devastation. Gorth, the massive rock creature, stepped forward next. His demonstration was simpler but no less impressive. He walked up to a reinforced barrier designed to withstand attacks from starship weapons. The barrier hummed with energy, powerful enough to stop a charging spacecraft. Gorth simply pulled back one enormous stone fist and punched straight through the barrier. The energy field collapsed in showers of sparks, and his rocky hand emerged from the other side, trailing debris and twisted metal. The hole he created was perfectly round, as if he had used some kind of drilling machine. The energy being Nixara took her turn next, expanding to fill nearly half the demonstration area. Her form crackled with electrical discharge that lit up the entire hall like lightning during a storm. The energy dancing around her could have powered a small city for weeks. Lightning arced between her extended form and every metal object in the room, creating a light show that temporarily overloaded the recording equipment. Several smaller students had to shield their optical sensors from the brilliant display. The raw power on show was enough to destroy an entire building. Each demonstration drew louder cheers from the watching crowd. These were the natural weapons that had allowed these species to conquer planets and build interstellar empires. Each student showed abilities that had been refined over millions of years of evolution and countless wars. Finally, all eyes turned to Taeho. Standing in the center of the demonstration area, Tho looked impossibly small and fragile compared to what had come before. He wore the standard academy uniform with no special equipment, no visible weapons, and no apparent enhancements of any kind. The crowd had grown quiet, curious to see what the human would do. Some students leaned forward with genuine interest. Others barely concealed their amusement at what they expected to be a disappointing finale to such an impressive show. Cadet Kim Taeho, Commander Zorneth announced, "Please demonstrate your species' natural combat capabilities." Taeho looked around the room, slowly taking in the faces of his classmates. Some showed curiosity, others showed skepticism, and more than a few displayed what looked like pity for the human who had to follow such amazing displays of power. Instructor Taeho said clearly, "May I use classroom materials for my demonstration?" The commander's mandibles clicked with confusion. "Classroom materials? We have provided advanced targeting systems and practice equipment." Surely those would be more suitable for your demonstration. Thank you, but I would prefer to work with what is available in any standard learning environment, he replied. A chair, perhaps, and that support beam from the holographic display unit that was damaged earlier. A wave of confused sounds went through the assembled crowd. Why would anyone choose furniture over advanced weapons? What kind of demonstration could possibly be done with a chair and a piece of metal? Several students made what were probably snorting sounds in their languages. Commander Zorneth looked puzzled, but after a moment he nodded. Very well. You may use whatever classroom materials you require. Tae-ho walked over to one of the standard-issue academy chairs, examining it carefully with his hands. He tested the flexibility of the backrest, checked the joints where different pieces connected, and seemed to be measuring something with his eyes. Next, he moved to the holographic display unit that had been damaged during Feltar's earlier demonstration. One of the support struts had been knocked loose, creating a straight piece of reinforced metal about as long as Tae-ho was tall. He lifted it, testing its weight and balance like someone examining a tool. The alien. Students watched in growing confusion as the human began taking apart the chair with quick, precise movements. His hands worked methodically, separating components and laying them out in a pattern that made no sense to anyone watching. What is he doing? Whispered one student to another, loud enough for many to hear. I think he is building something, replied another. But what could he possibly make from furniture? Some students started making sounds that might have been laughter. The idea that classroom furniture could become a weapon seemed ridiculous to beings who controlled gravity, lightning, and molecular vibration. But Tae-ho continued working with calm concentration, ignoring the sounds from the crowd. He used the metal support beam as a foundation, attaching curved pieces from the chair's backrest to either end. The flexible material bent under carefully applied pressure, storing energy like a spring. His fingers worked quickly, using strips of fabric from the cushion to bind everything together with complex knots. The shape that emerged was elegant in its simplicity, a curved piece of technology that looked almost organic in design, something that belonged more in a museum of primitive artifacts than in a classroom full of advanced weapons. Slowly, recognition dawned on Commander Zorneth and some of the more educated students. The instructor clicked his mandibles rapidly with excitement. He is making a bow, a projectile weapon that stores mechanical energy. The crowd leaned forward with renewed interest. They had studied primitive weapons in historical courses, but seeing one constructed from scratch was something completely different. The simplicity was almost insulting. Yet there was something fascinating about watching it take shape. The demonstration was over, but its impact would spread through the Galactic Military Academy like ripples in a pond. Word traveled quickly through the various species communication networks about the human who had created a weapon from classroom furniture and outperformed advanced technology with techniques older than most civilizations. In the days that followed, Tae-ho found himself approached by classmates who had previously dismissed humans as technologically inferior creatures from a backward planet. Now they wanted to understand not just how he had made the bow, but the thinking behind it. The human approach to problem-solving that could find weapons in ordinary furniture. Silandra was among the first to seek him out after classes. Her crystalline structure resonated with curious harmonics as she spoke. Human Tae-ho, I have been analyzing the mathematics of your projectile trajectories. The calculations you performed mentally would require significant computational power for most species. How do you achieve such precision without technological assistance? Tae-ho considered how to explain something that seemed natural to him, but was clearly alien to others. My grandfather taught me that the mind and body must work together, he said. We do not calculate the path of the arrow with mathematics alone, but feel it through practice and experience. Thousands of hours of repetition create what you might call intuitive physics. The concept fascinated his alien classmates. Most of their combat systems relied on advanced technology to handle complex calculations, leaving the user free to focus on strategy and tactics. The idea of internalizing those calculations through biological training was something entirely new to consider. We have computers that can calculate trajectory in microseconds, said one of the small furry creatures. But you seem to do it even faster. How is biological processing superior to digital systems? It's not superior. Taiho replied, just different. Computers calculate every variable perfectly, but they need time to process information. My mind does not calculate everything. It recognizes patterns learned through experience. The arrow feels right or wrong before I release it. This led to long discussions about the difference between knowledge and wisdom, between processing information and understanding patterns. The alien students had grown up with technology that made complex tasks simple, but they had never considered that simplicity itself might be a form of sophistication. Veltar took longer to approach the subject. His pride had been wounded by the demonstration, and his scales still shifted to embarrassed colors when other students mentioned the bow. But eventually his curiosity overcame his ego. I admit your demonstration was impressive. Human Taiho, he said one afternoon when they were alone in the training hall. But in actual combat, would such primitive weapons be practical against modern armor and shields? That depends on how you define practical, Taiho replied. On how you choose to fight. He led Veltar to the Academy's tactical simulation chamber where he demonstrated other applications of his improvised weapon. Silent elimination of electronic sentries by striking their optical sensors. Disruption of power systems by hitting junction boxes with precisely placed arrows. Creating diversions that allowed flanking maneuvers around heavily defended positions. The key is not to fight the enemy's strength but to exploit their weaknesses, Taiho explained as he used an arrow to disable a simulated guard robot. Advanced civilizations often develop blind spots. They prepare for threats similar to their own capabilities while overlooking simpler approaches. Veltar watched as Taiho solved tactical problems that had stumped the lizard warrior for weeks. Using environment as weapon, turning enemy advantages into disadvantages, finding victory through cleverness rather than overwhelming force. Your people think differently than ours, Veltar admitted, his scales finally showing colors that indicated respect. We are taught that the strongest warrior wins. You seem to believe that the smartest warrior wins. Both can be true. Taiho said. But when you face an enemy stronger, then yourself being smart becomes more important than being strong. Commander Zorneth had been observing these informal lessons with growing interest. Reports of the demonstration had reached the highest levels of military command. Requests for information came from fleet admirals and planetary defense coordinators. Everyone wanted to understand what other surprises the newest galactic species might bring to warfare cadet. Kim, the instructor, said one morning, I have received communications from the Strategic Planning Division. They are interested in having you present your findings about human combat philosophy to senior military leaders. Taiho felt nervous at the thought of addressing alien generals and admirals. But he also felt proud, not just personal pride, but pride in representing his people in their ways. I would be honored, instructor. Should I prepare additional demonstrations? That will not be necessary. Commander Zorneth replied, his mandibles clicking with approval. Your classroom furniture bow has already made its point. What they want to understand is the thinking behind it. The human capacity to find solutions in unexpected places. As the semester continued, Taiho found himself becoming an unofficial ambassador for human ingenuity. His alien classmates brought him problems that seemed impossible to solve with conventional approaches. Curious to see what unconventional solutions he might discover, a group of engineering students challenged him to cross a chasm using only materials found in their laboratory. Taiho built a bridge from support beams and cable that was stronger than anything they had designed with advanced materials. When they asked how he knew it would work, he said his grandfather had taught him that the strongest structures were often the simplest ones. Flight training instructors were amazed when Taiho found ways to outmaneuver opponents with superior spacecraft by using gravity wells and asteroid fields as weapons. His human mind seemed to see tactical opportunities that computer analysis missed. Even in academic classes, Taiho brought different perspectives to old problems. When studying historical battles, he pointed out how many conflicts were decided not by superior weapons but by creative use of terrain weather and timing factors that advanced civilizations often overlooked in favor of technological solutions. The shy Korean student who had entered the academy feeling outmatched by his classmates, natural advantages had become something unexpected. A teacher not through superior strength or advanced technology, but by demonstrating that sometimes the oldest methods were also the most effective ones. Years later, when Taeho had become a respected instructor at the academy himself, students would still ask about the day he made a weapon from classroom furniture. But by then they understood it was never really about the bow. It was about the lesson that human beings, despite their apparent disadvantages, brought something unique and valuable to the galactic community. The ability to find extraordinary solutions in ordinary materials, the wisdom to know that